you go on in your life, and obviously we know this part of your life and in the life that has been so public for so many years. But I really want to carve out the climb, because it doesn't always start easy. It doesn't always start, people see you at the end. They don't see you working your way up. So obviously you have two loving parents support you, living in Indiana. You end up going to Indiana University, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Pledging Kappa.
That is correct.
The wrong way, I might add.
I'm not gonna hold that mistake against you, brother Shawn. I'll just say yo to the brothers who are watching and leave it alone, brother.
And I'm gonna say blue fire right back to you.
And I ain't mad at you. Man.
Okay. There's a pivotal moment in your life where you have a friend, Denver Smith. He's killed by police. And, I gotta believe that this is at least one of the significant incidents of your life that set you on this political path that you've taken over the course of your life. But he's killed by he's killed by Indiana police officers, and they claim it was in self-defense. Can you give us a little backstory on that?
Sure. And first of all, you're absolutely right. There are at least 3 defining moments in my life, and this is clearly one of them. It is the defining moment that put me on the path to being the advocate, the lover of my people, the server of my people that I've tried to become in my career. All begins when I'm a sophomore in college at Indiana University. A friend of mine, as you mentioned, named Denver Smith, who's on the football team at IU in the Big Ten, was shot and killed by cops. They shot him an inordinate number of times in his back, but claimed self-defense. It's no different from the story we saw of this brother in Ohio the other day, who the cops shot at 90 times, hit this brother 60 times, 60 bullets in this brother's body as he's running away from the police, clearly no threat to them. Well, the story of this brother in Ohio, I had this same experience, 30 plus years ago when I was a student at Indiana University. And up until that point in my life, I had never experienced police brutality, never had an issue with the state, as it were, certainly not the military state in that way, the police state in that way, until they shoot and kill my friend Denver. But there's no way you accept that your friend is shot multiple times in the back and allow the white officers who shot your black friend to claim self-defense. And that is when I went into overdrive, into the first step in my journey of being an advocate. Prior to that time, I had studied and read everything about Dr. King. Dr. King, as a child, was my hero. When I was in high school, on the speech team, on the debate team, everything I did was about King. All the speeches that I gave in these various contests that I competed in was my interpretation of King's words. The category that I competed in on the speech team was called OI, oratorical interpretation. You take the words of another and you give your own interpretation of that delivery. And so I did everything that King ever did, essentially, as I competed all throughout high school and won first prize and pretty much everything I did, because you can't fade what King had to say. And then the way I tried to deliver it, I tried to slay it every time I stood before an audience of judges. And so I was the top competitor on our speech team and went on to state every year that I was in high school to win these contests. But I had the words of King infused essentially in my brain, in my head, in my heart, because I was, again, reciting him at all these contests. And so everything I get my hands on about King, I would read, I would study. And so King was already my hero by the time I got to college. I refer to King all the time now as the greatest American this country has ever produced. That's my assessment. He's the greatest American this country has ever produced. I felt that way, even though I didn't have that language when I was in high school. Now I'm in college, and all this stuff, all this King that I put into my system now comes to the fore. Now here's my opportunity to not be King, but to be King-like and step up in love and service to my community, to try to speak truth to power and to the powerless about my friend Denver Smith, who'd been murdered by these cops. And that is the moment that starts my trajectory and in terms of being the advocate that I've become over these years for the best interest, I hope, of our people.
Wow. I read that you went on to lead marches and protested to defend Smith and bring light to that situation, which ultimately led you to doing an internship with the Bloomington mayor, Mayor Allison. Working along Mayor Allison, did that further put you in the position to say, I need to get into this world. I need to make a difference? Was she a person who advocated for you to say, look, I'll give you the resources, I'll let you be in the office, but I want you to learn and I want you to go out there and do something with the platform you're being given?
First of all, Brother Shawn, I just have to pause for a second and say, I love a Negro who does his homework. I don't know where you're getting all this stuff from, but I just love a brother who does his brother or sister who does his or her homework. It makes it tickles me, but it also makes it a lot easier to just follow the host because they know what they're talking about rather than ask me a bunch of crazy questions about stuff that ain't true, off the wall. You ain't done your homework. It makes it a lot easier. So first of all, just props to you, props to my daddy, and props to you for having done your homework, man. But yes, to answer your question is yes. I got to know Mayor Allison because I was leading those marches and those protests in Bloomington on behalf of my friend Denver Smith. I'm protesting against the Bloomington Police Department. These are the city police, not the campus police, the city police who killed my friend Denver. In the process of protesting and marching and the like, I'm coming face to face oftentimes with the mayor of the city. And over time, I think she was so impressed, even though we were on opposite sides of this issue. Her job was to defend the cops to the extent that she could. And my job was to call out the cops to the extent that I could. But we got to sort of know each other over the course of these marches and protests. And lo and behold, as time goes on, I get an invitation to work for the mayor in the mayor's office. I'm just a student still. I'm still a student. But the mayor of the city of Bloomington invites me to come work as a part of her staff. So long story short, I accepted the invitation because I thought that I could bring a different voice, bring a different perspective, and certainly learn. It was an internship for me to learn how government works from the inside. I was protesting on the outside, but I wondered what it would be like to raise my voice on the inside. And so I accepted the invitation to work with her, and I did that for a year or two. And learned a great deal working for the mayor of the city of Bloomington, which eventually led me, as you already know, because you've done your homework, to work for another mayor later on, my hero and my fraternity brother, Tom Bradley, who was the first and still only African-American mayor of the city of LA. But I wouldn't have had a job with Tom Bradley if I hadn't been turned on by what it means to work inside of government and to use the levers of power to do good for your people. That started with Mayor Allison and eventually culminated with an opportunity to work for Tom Bradley here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, Mayor Allison seems like quite the person. You know, I read in your book that there was at one point where you were adding extra hours.
Yeah.
And you were being paid for these extra hours, which could be a felony.
Yeah.
And instead of her telling on you or her doing anything punitive, she gave you the opportunity to just work those hours off and she kept it quiet.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
I'm glad it is correct. I write about that in my book because I believe if you're going to write a book about your life, you got to be transparent. You got to be honest. And one of the first mistakes I ever made in my career was, as you've just described, I would work for 4 hours and I would put down 5 or 6. Nothing outrageous, but I would work for 6 hours and put down 7 or 8. And just trying to squeeze an extra hour or two of payroll out of the city. I figured the city had the money, and I was a student, a starving student, and was trying to work my way through college. My parents did not have the money to send me to school. I got through Indiana University on some scholarship money from the speech and debate team, from money that I earned in my work-study jobs. I was putting my way through school. And I was wrong. I was padding my hours, essentially, and I was stealing, and I hadn't processed it in this way. But in padding my hours, I was stealing taxpayer money. And it wasn't until the mayor called me in after I'd been caught doing this and said to me to my face, Tavis, you are stealing the taxpayers' money. And she looked at me and she says, you are better than this. You have a bright career and future in front of you. And I want you to know that I could call in those same Bloomington police and have you arrested for theft, for embezzlement, for stealing the taxpayers' money. Rather than do that, I want you to go back through all these records and I want you to give me a good idea of how many hours you padded. And you're going to work those hours off on behalf of the taxpayers of this city. And you're not going to get paid for that. But I hope that you will learn a lesson from this that will hold you steady for the rest of your life and career, because you're a bright young man. You got a bright future in front of you. And let me add right quick, Brother Shawn, this is a white woman. This is a white woman, and I'm a chocolate boy at Indiana University. She had absolutely no reason per se to let me off the hook, to not have me arrested, to not send me to jail, to not embarrass me, to not put something on my record that I could never get expunged, perhaps. Too many brothers to this day, as you well know, are in harm's way because they made a mistake when they were young. They paid their debt to society, but that mistake is still following them. It's still on their records. It's not expunged, and so they can't get jobs. They can't do X, Y, or Z. Some brothers been to prison. They paid their debt, but they can't vote. I know exactly what that could have meant for me, but for the grace of God, there go I. And so the mayor, rather than having me arrested and sent to jail, gave me a chance to work those hours off. She forgave me and hoped in that moment that this would be a teachable lesson. So when I tell you I know something about grace and about mercy and about forgiveness, I know that because it happened to me when I was just a kid in college. And so I write about it in my memoir, what I know for sure, because I wanted people to know that I haven't always been perfect. I make mistakes like everybody else does. But sometimes in life, when it comes to other people, I like to say we have to always save some space for grace. Save some space for grace. At some point in your life, somebody had or will have mercy and grace upon you. And I think it behooves each of us to live our lives where we save space for grace for others. And that's what Mary Allison did for me.
Beautiful. You know, I brought that up for a reason. Again, you're very accomplished. People see the Tavis Smiley today. But there is somebody out there who they're going through something right now. They did something that it is not the sum total of who they are.
Right.
It is something that I did that I regret. I know that I shouldn't have done it. I got caught, but you can bounce back from it.
Yes.
You can absolutely bounce back from it. And we don't know where God is going to put an angel or put one of his own in your life.
That's right.
Because like you said, that same older white woman happened to be your boss, but you guys got to meet each other on opposing sides. She could have turned you over to them same police that you were protesting against, and she was the one that said, look, let this be a life lesson for you.
Yeah.
And I'm still going to help you to get to the next level of your career and not put it out there and damage you.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, it was you who put it out there. It wasn't her, you know, when you have become who you become, that said, hey, I got some dirt on this man. Let me put this out there.